welcome to my channel. I'm Jessica Kalombo, your host. Today we will be talking about a very sensitive topic, HIV and AIDS. And on board we have Professor Harold Brown, who is the president and founder of the HIV and AIDS community advocate in the USA. He's joining us from New York City, and he will be actually sharing also some of his own life experiences in a way to motivate and educate everyone else who is out there living, facing this pandemic. Let us hear what he has to say.
Thank you so kindly. It's a very important opportunity this morning to speak on HIV AIDS. Initially, it was called AIDS around the world, but now we have moved to the point that we label the virus HIV. And for many people back 40 years ago, it could be a misunderstanding. But we are talking about HIV AIDS. And the importance of it is that it is still a pandemic. It is still around the world. It still affects men, women, and children. But we have moved with great advancement and research to be able to protect the child before birth now. By the use of medication to while the baby is still in the pregnancy of mother, so that when he is born or she is born, it is without HIV. Prior to this, over the last 40 years, a child was born, the embryo, the fetus was ultimately born with HIV and had to take medication for 2 years as a baby. To overcome the virus and ultimately be free for the rest of their lives. And that is a wonderful advancement. It does include now the ability to enter the womb with the embryo fluid, and to use the proper medication to attack the virus. Now, about myself, if I may say so, humbly, I am a advocate. I am a possessor of the virus. I've had it 46 years. I'm now 76 years of age. I say that humbly for all of us to know, men, women, and children, that we can live a long time with the virus now. We now use a chronic maintenance model for helping men, women, and children control the virus in the body. And that's all it means. It's under control. We have many, many different medications that affect the virus. Now, I, 45 years ago, contracted the virus in New York City. And we had a very desperate time with stigma and hatred and very vile behavior and ugliness that came about because of the terror of not knowing what we know today, how to control the virus. And so it was a danger, in fact, life-threatening and deadly to have contracted the virus 45 years ago. And but now, scientific advancement and the tremendous efforts around the world, not in any just one country, but around the entire world. We have advanced science, the study and investigation of the virus to the point now we have medication that control it in the body and maintain life as a normal person would. Without treatment, a person once infected only lives 6 to 10 years. The cycle of the virus is in 3 stages. There's the prevention stage that allows for assessment to know our status. Our status is either positive or it's negative. We either have it or we don't. The only way we can assess that is through laboratory. It is important that blood is withdrawn from the body, a quantity, and it's studied in the lab for the infection. The virus has 7 stages. to which it enters the body, enters into the cell, uses the cell's DNA, that's the RNA and DNA of the gene, to transpose itself into 47 different pieces of the virus, which it comes out of the cell and infects the whole body. It's constantly looking for a cell to stay alive, and so that's why we get sick. Without medication controlling the virus and the replication of itself, HIV is still a life-threatening virus. And we do not want to in any way dismiss the fact that it is a life-threatening virus. I have had the opportunity to travel to the International AIDS Conference. I first learned about it in Washington, D.C., where the first International AIDS Conference was held in 1988. Now, the International AIDS Conference is held every 2 years. And that conference, there is a tremendous outpouring of knowledge, research. Attendance at the last conference, which I attended, along with 5 other members of my state, we formed a delegation and attended with 6,000 other registered delegates, plus 3,000 additional delegates who were observers, dignitaries, volunteers. Very, very significant to have our volunteers, one of which escorted me around the international conference in Montreal, Canada. The young people from around the world came and presented their selves with the message of HIV awareness, that we want to know that HIV is a worldwide pandemic still. It's been overshadowed by COVID and COVID's many forms that it has taken, and untreated COVID has also led to many deaths. It's still a very terrible virus in the world, and it continues to claim lives. As such, it has overshadowed the HIV. It has moved HIV out of sight because, of course, the consequence of COVID has been very impactful on individual lives, upon communities, and upon nations. We now still have HIV, and we still have a problem with access. We still have a problem with medication availability. We do, however, around the world, particularly in Africa, we have PEPFAR, P-E-P-F-A-R, from the United States, in which tremendous quantities of medication has been made available to many different African nations. I myself have my master's degree from the New York University and studied 6 years for the PhD at New York University before I got the virus. However, it gave me great acquisition of skill with research, tremendous knowledge of human behavior and human study, and ultimately a tremendous experience with the way in which the nation of the United States of America dealt with the virus, as was consequential to many other nations. We have this tremendous amount of stigma, hatred, and misunderstanding of individuals who possess the virus. I have 7 brothers and a sister. I'm from Indianapolis, Indiana, in the middle of the United States of America. I went from New York City to Indiana when I got sick. My parents were very kind, loving, to accept me in my very difficult stage of illness at that point. And my mother cared for me for 12 years. before I got back up on my feet. I returned to Indiana with the virus and could not walk. I could not move. I was paralyzed 2 years. That's how worse the virus was at the beginning. It was necessary for me to have ultimately my mother's beautiful magic, and which she discovered because I couldn't eat and had lost weight. I was down to 65 pounds because of the virus. And we didn't have any medicine at that time. So there was 17 years that I fought the virus without medication, based on my desire and striving and courage to say, I'm not going to die. I am not going to allow this virus to kill me. I struggled with life and death to ultimately prevail with the help ultimately of medicine in 1995. But it was in 1978 that I actually got the virus, but it was not acknowledged till 1981 in the United States by the CDC, which was the Center for the Development of the AIDS virus. And that was under President Reagan. We want to say now that President of the country, President Biden, has committed himself to additional aid to the PEPFAR movement and act, the founding of the program for many African nations to make sure that the access and availability of medication is there on the continent in many different countries. There are some countries that have refused to participate, and that makes it very difficult, ultimately leading to many unnecessary deaths because of the attitude and position of any particular country against the use of medication or against persons who are of a particular behavior. And this is not the way in which we want to live as human beings to one another. We want to understand each other's humanity. It is very important to remember we all came from the same place. We were all babies. There isn't anything special about any one group of human beings, that we all came from the beginning of parents, and we did not know anything about our genders or sexuality till way up into age 7 or 8, and sometimes 10 years of age. So what's happening during those first years of life that have nothing to do with the way we become, and yet everything to do with what we become as adults. And so we want to embrace mothers. We want to understand that mothers are not the conveyors of the virus, that is men who convey the virus. And we want to acknowledge that it could not move if not some kind of other behavior was taking place than among just a particular group. Other persons are participating in what's going on in that group. And they then, only because of that circumstance and their behavior, does the virus get into the family, into mother, and into children. Many mothers do not tell their children they have HIV, or they were born with HIV. This was the case when we began, as we advanced with the science, and the result of science telling us knowledge about how to understand the virus, understand how it's transmitted, understand how it impacts our lives, and how it impacts our communities, and ultimately, profoundly, it will impact our nation.
Yes, a very, very touching story as his own life experience. At the same time, very motivating because he is now 76 years old and still going and living with the virus for about 46 years, for more than 46 years. So we can see that there is a way for us to still live together with those who are undergoing such a journey, and how we can give them the support that they need, as he had to be cared for 12 years by his own mother, and at that time there were not even medication, and now that there is medications, he have managed to get a medication that is actually helping him to look after himself and to live the life that he always wished to live. And he is doing wonders by also offering scholarship to all those who are willing to educate themselves more on this in this field of HIV and AIDS. Yes, this was just the part one. We've heard the story of Professor Harold Brown and his journey in living with this pandemic, the virus, and how he goes about to protecting himself and also to educating those who are out there. If you loved this video, please don't forget to subscribe and to like, and also catch me in the next one, which will be our last part on this topic with Professor Harold. Until then, bye.